North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. What do? We bring you the news, the real news. We analyze that news for fact and bias. We point out both. We make commentary on the news, and that is not news. That is opinion. We do differentiate between opinion and news on this broadcast. I'm not telling you what to think. I'll tell you what I think. Instead of keeping it hidden like everybody else that does news, if it's possible to keep it hidden. Of course, they don't do that as much as they used to. Instead of keeping it hidden, I believe in honesty. And so you'll know where I'm coming from. And you might say, well, is this just another one of those right-wing guys? No, I'm a constitutional conservative. I don't have a political party. You used to think that the Republican Party was a constitutionally conservative party, but not that I can see. Consequently, I don't have a political party, which means I take shots at both of them. And unfortunately, it's sort of like shooting fish in a barrel. But more about that coming up in just a couple of seconds. The politics of the show are not right-wing. They are constitutional. The Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the Federalist that explained it all. That's really all you need to know about. It's true. I mean, that's what we talk about here. You know, because I see a whole bunch of things that are being pulled off by the United States government that has nothing to do with the Constitution of the United States. And that's a major problem, especially when you consider that the sole purpose of the Constitution of the United States is to limit government. Without the Constitution, there is no limit. It sure looks like that to me. So, by the way, if that puts me at odds with one political party more than another, that's not being partisan. That's being American. Let's get busy. Tropical Storm Ian is what the storm that pounded Florida is now being called. Let me tell you something. He left it all in Florida. Now, that's not exactly true. Hurricane Ian is going to head out to the Atlantic where it's going to re-intensify. And then it's headed towards South Carolina and Georgia and North Carolina and up the entire eastern seaboard. Then probably into the North Atlantic to wreak havoc on anything it touches there. This is a bad storm. Here's how USA Today talks about its updates. The death toll was rising, hundreds of thousands desperately seeking rescue. As historically powerful Hurricane Ian, now a tropical storm, hammered Florida with heavy rain, strong winds, one of the strongest systems in U.S. history. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis said the storm caused a 500-year flooding event and said Coast Guard helicopters were plucking trapped residents from the roofs of their homes. Communities across the state were or will be swamped by the overwhelming waters. The impacts of the storm are historic. The damage that has been done is historic. We've never seen a flood event like this. We've never seen a storm surge of this magnitude, just as they forecast. At least 13 people were reported dead in counties across the state, a number that's expected to rise. Sheriffs in Southwest Florida said 911 centers were inundated by thousands of stranded callers, some with life-threatening emergencies. More than 2.6 million Florida homes and businesses were without power early today. Ian had weakened to a tropical storm, but was forced to continue roaring across the state most of the day before heading out into the Atlantic. Not forced, but forecast, rather. The storm flooded entire communities, leaving residents stranded in their homes after making landfall Wednesday with 150-mile-per-hour maximum sustained winds. That, by the way, just 7 miles per hour shy of a Category 5 hurricane, the strongest on the Saffir-Simpson hurricane scale. By the way, you talking about that was there was a conversation today on Fox News where this storm may be reclassified as a Category 5 storm insofar as there was at least one 158-mile-per-hour gust, at least one measurement of 158 miles per hour. Now, it's supposed to be about sustained winds, but when you get much over 130, it really doesn't make that much difference. It really simply doesn't. The storm previously tore into Cuba, killing 2 people and bringing down the entire country's electrical grid. The latest developments look like this. The U.S. Coast Guard was searching for a group of more than 20 Cuban migrants after their boat sank in stormy weather near the Keys. A U.S. Border Patrol agent tweeted that 9 have been rescued, and the search for the rest continues. Ian strengthened landfall, tied it for the 5th strongest hurricane when measured by wind speed to strike the U.S. It's tied with 5 other hurricanes that reached 150 miles per hour, 2 in Florida, 2 in Louisiana, and 1 in Texas. Waffle House, known for always being open, said 35 outlets were shut down due to the storms as of Thursday morning. No information on when they're going to reopen. Residents described the terror after a tornado tore through a condominium complex near Delray Beach on the Atlantic side of South Florida, ripping off roofs and turning over vehicles. I felt things blow past my head and face, said resident Jim Travis. When I opened the door, my apartment was destroyed. At least 13 deaths have been confirmed in Florida. The destruction and upheaval left behind made it difficult to get an accurate assessment of loss of life, but there are already early reports of 13 deaths. More are expected. Charlotte County Commissioner Chris Constance told CNN Thursday afternoon there have been 6 confirmed fatalities in the country, which is just north of Fort Myers. Also speaking on CNN, Lee County Sheriff Carmine Marceno said at least 6 deaths have been confirmed in his county, which includes Cayo Costa. That's an island near Cape Coral where the storm made landfall on Wednesday. A 72-year-old man in Deltona, about 30 miles northeast of Orlando, died after falling into a canal using a hose to drain his pool in the heavy rain. This according to the Volusia County Sheriff's Office. Constance said 4 shelters in his county had to be evacuated because of structural damage. Many roads were impassable because of downed power lines or flooding. It's the biggest catastrophe I've ever seen in my lifetime, said Constance, speaking from the Broward County headquarters in South Florida, where he traveled ahead of the storm. This is unprecedented. I was in Punta Gorda through Hurricane Charlie in 2004. While that was devastating, this is so much bigger. It's affecting so many more people. That is USA Today. Fox News talks about it this way. Speaking to reporters at an afternoon update from the Charlotte County Emergency Operations Center, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis said today that he had seen a number of efforts to bring people to safety, particularly in Lee County, Collier County, Charlotte, and Naples County. This is going to be a 24-hour-7 operation because we realize just how important it is. DeSantis said more than $2 million had been raised to support storm recovery efforts in less than 24 hours, noting that is just the beginning. There's a lot more that's going to need to be done. DeSantis said that he had been able to meet some of the more than 42,000 linemen in Lake City, Florida, and the Florida Power and Light Company had its biggest footprint with the number of employees they sent. FPL President Eric Szilagyi said that 20,000 men and women were working to restore power. 700,000 customers had seen power restored after the hurricane. Pretty impressive. Pretty darn impressive. I mean, the storm isn't even completely out of Florida yet, and power's back on. Very, very good. Now, 1 transmission tower was lost. That's impressive as well. We're now in the process of getting the distribution system back up and substations that had flying debris go into them cleared out so we can get them back online. Szilagyi explained that sections that will require rebuilding, there will be sections requiring rebuilding in the barrier islands. And so this is a 24/7 effort to stabilize and restore. Also, we're going to do whatever we can to assist with that effort, said DeSantis. The governor told members of the media that Sanibel Island in particular is destruction. Simple words. The island is destruction and had gotten hit with nearly biblical storm surges. Roads and structures were washed away there. He called the images of Sanibel really difficult images to see. The governor said that while the state wants to get back to some of the sense of normalcy as quickly as possible, they realize it could be harder in some areas than in others. But let's work on Sanibel, bring it back to where it was as soon as we possibly can. To ensure support reaches Florida as quickly as possible, Governor Bill Lee of Tennessee signed an executive order to suspend transportation regulations for Hurricane Ian resources moving through Tennessee. Very nice. Tennessee Governor Bill Lee signed that so that the help could reach Florida as quickly as possible. Florida's Orange County Sheriff's Office has shared harrowing images and video of its response to the wake of Hurricane Ian. Photos posted to Twitter show deputies wading through floodwaters and helping residents to be evacuated. The OCSO deputies and the emergency response team have been helping residents evacuate all morning in the Orlo Vista neighborhood, the office said. They'll continue to assist residents that need help. Also, by the way, there are other updates. This from CNN. 40 Florida nursing homes have been evacuated. 40 nursing homes in Florida have been evacuated because of Hurricane Ian. This according to the Florida Healthcare Association. As of this morning, there have been about 40 nursing home evacuations, approximately 3,400 residents. Spokesperson Kristen Knapp said in an email to CNN. Most are in the low-lying areas where counties have issued evacuation orders. Others are in areas where concerns over flooding are occurring. The Florida Healthcare Association is an advocacy organization representing long-term care providers. More than 2.6 million people across Florida still without power, says CNN. Officials are warning people to take precautions when firing up portable generators. Generators can be immensely helpful for storm victims without power. I've got one in my garage right this minute. They can also be deadly when used incorrectly. Carbon monoxide poisoning is one of the leading causes of death after storms in areas dealing with power outages. This is according to the National Weather Service. There's also a risk of electrocution or the generator starting a fire. This is according to the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Here are some tips to keep in mind according to the National Hurricane Center. Never use a generator inside an enclosed space, such as a house or a garage. Keep the generator outside at least 20 feet away from any doors or windows. It's also a good idea to have a battery-powered carbon monoxide detector, as carbon monoxide is invisible and odorless and will kill you dead. If you feel sick or dizzy, find fresh air and get medical attention, said the NHC. Before refueling the generator, turn it off and let it cool down. Good idea. That's an important safety tip. Gasoline or other flammable liquids spilled on hot engine parts could ignite. Yeah. A Naples fire station was submerged in water, but the department is still making rescues. Hurricane Ian left a fire station in hard-hit Naples, Florida, submerged in water. It did not stop crews from making rescues in the community today. This is according to the department fire chief. It got us quick, Chief Pete DeMaria told CNN, describing the moment the storm surge flooded the first responders' base of operations. Video shows firefighters wading through knee-high and waist-deep water in the station's garage, moving toward fire trucks and checking on what equipment still functioned. We still couldn't get our vehicles out of the station fast enough. We had to shelter in place for a little while. The fire chief said emergency calls came to the station while crews were stuck inside. It's frustrating and unnerving. I'll bet. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Thanks very much for joining us today. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. If you know someone who's living in Florida and has their cell phone service back, ask them to call us. 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. I'd like to speak to anybody who has friends in Florida. If you can do it, this is the Wells Report. Back with more coming up in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. Tropical storm Ian may reach into your life after all, as all kinds of air flights have been canceled all around the country, mainly in the southeastern portion of the nation. Flight cancellations are about to surpass those of Wednesday, the worst day for U.S. flight cancellations in the last 6 months. FlightAware data shows that as of 1 p.m. Eastern Time on Thursday, airlines have canceled more than 2,000 flights in the U.S., have already canceled more than 1,000 flights on Friday. Tropical storm Ian is moving off Florida into the Atlantic, is expected to turn northwest and make landfall again in the Carolinas tomorrow, according to FAA administration. They said in a statement saying that passengers should check on the status with their flights with the airlines. American Airlines canceled more than 600 flights yesterday, another 348 today. Says operations at its fourth largest hub in Miami are recovering. Southwest Airlines, which typically operates a high number of routes to and from Florida, canceled more than 525 flights. United Airlines said it has proactively canceled more than 392 flights to and from Florida airports since Tuesday, day before yesterday. Sarasota Bradenton International Airport anticipates reopening by late Friday. CEO Rick Piccolo told CNN that information. He watched from his office as the storm pulled apart the airport's roof. While we won't look as pretty as we used to because the ceiling's all gone, we will be functional. Tampa International Airport officials said an inspection this morning determined that TPA did not sustain any serious damage during the storm. It expects high passenger volumes when it reopens at 10 a.m. tomorrow. The airport is very lucky to have come out on the other side of this largely unscathed, said airport CEO Joe Lopano. Melbourne Orlando International Airport, one of the smaller commercial airports in Florida, with service from Allegiant, American, and Delta, says it also plans to open up tomorrow morning. CEO James Parrish said Punta Gorda Airport experienced extensive damage to hangars at the airport, does not have power in the passenger terminal. Once power is restored, the airport will make plans to restore service from Allegiant Air. Otherwise, more infrastructure news. All the bridges to Pine Island, Florida have failed, meaning the barrier island is inaccessible by car. This, according to Lee County Manager Rod Desjardins, during a briefing this afternoon. There are also 5 structural failures on the Sanibel Causeway because of Hurricane Ian. My goodness. The curfew in Lee County, which includes the cities of Cape Coral and Fort Myers, that began last night at 6 p.m. remain in effect, said Desjardins. Desjardins also participated in a helicopter tour of the damage this morning. Said the greatest damage in the county that the county suffered appeared to have occurred on Fort Myers Beach after storm surge levels reached 10 feet. Lee County Sheriff Carmine Marceno said the area looks like it was hit by a very large tornado. He said there are no words to describe what we saw. Marceno said his team has been involved in dozens of rescues made in waist-high water, and he urged residents to stay home. If you don't have to be out, don't be out. Yeah, because there are an awful lot of emergency traffic, lots of emergency traffic out there. And there are a lot of people that need to do their work and get people that are stranded and hurt to assistance as quickly as possible. So stay away from the area. Also, don't loot. Please don't do that. Just stay away. Let these poor people recover as much as they possibly can. One of the things about being someone who actually takes part in hurricane evacuations and runs shelters or helps to run shelters is that you really don't have an adequate understanding of just how shocking it is to have your home completely destroyed by a hurricane. There one moment, gone the next. Those people need some help. God bless them, and we'll be back with more of the Wells Report in just a moment. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells, bringing you the news, the real news. This may not come as a big surprise, but I was going through something. I didn't really have any idea where I could fit this in. But it's important enough so that it may be incongruous coming out of Hurricane Ian coverage. But I've got to be personally honest, perfectly honest with you. I am incredibly disappointed in the fact that people who supposedly work for the people of the United States and the United States government find themselves being enriched far beyond their typical capabilities. This comes from Substack. Last night, the auditors at openthebooks.com received Dr. Anthony Fauci's fiscal year 2021 financial disclosures from the National Institutes of Health. These are not documents that anybody else will very likely be reporting on. So thanks to Substack and openthebooks.com, we have this information. The documents contain a wealth of previously unknown information. For example, the Fauci household's net worth now exceeds $12.6 million. That's up $5 million from 2019 through 2021. In January 2022, U.S. Senator Roger Marshall forced open Dr. Anthony Fauci's unredacted fiscal year 2019 and 2020 financial disclosures. The release follows a heated Senate exchange between Fauci and Marshall that concluded with Fauci calling the senator a moron. It was Fauci's code red moment. That's when America's top doctor melted down on national television in the Senate hearing. When Marshall cited Forbes, that was our research on Fauci's financials published in the column and at Forbes magazine. This, by the way, is coming from Adam Andrzejewski. Okay. Anyway, it's been a dogfight to open the book on Fauci's finances. For example, the organization has filed 4 federal lawsuits versus the NIH to open those books. Today, we posted more of the financial disclosures that Dr. Fauci did not want you to see. The Fauci household disclosed a net worth increased from $7.6 million in January 2019 to over $12.6 million in December through December of 2021. Fauci continued to be the most highly compensated federal employee, earning $456,000 in 2021, $480,000 in 2022. Fauci out-earned the president, 4-star generals, and roughly 4.3 million other federal bureaucrats. In 2021, Fauci augmented his government income with nearly $1 million in prizes from nonprofit organizations around the world. For example, the Dan David Foundation, based in Israel, awarded $901,400 for speaking truth to power and defending science during the Trump administration. During the ongoing pandemic years of 2021, the Fauci household income, perks and benefits, and unrealized investment gains totaled $2,832,876, including federal income and benefits of $903,497. Outside awards and royalties totaled $1,019,205, and another $910,174 in investment gains, nearly $1 million in investments. I wonder what investments those were. Here are the numbers as compiled by the auditors at openthebooks.com, an organization that is led by this author. Disclosures showed $910,174 in gains with the Fauci stock, bond, and money market portfolio during 2021. In 2020, the portfolio gained $794,369. The total value of Dr. Fauci's investment account was $10,271,626. His wife's investments totaled another $2,405,887, as of the 31st of December 2021. The funds were held in a mix of trust, retirement, and college education accounts. Fauci has an IRA worth $706,219. That, by the way, is up $67,700. A detailed benefit brokerage account totaling $2,551,210. That's up $147,688. A revocable trust worth $7,014,197. That's up from $1,718,299. Good grief. Man. His wife's revocable trust is worth $2,269,225. That's up $306,406. And an IRA totaling $136,662. The disclosures show he's invested in fairly broadly targeted mutual funds, no problem there, with no reported holdings of individual stocks. The Fauci's deposited an additional net $1,346,304 in savings during the period. Well, I would expect so. So it goes on and on and on. And you can see this at Open the Books Substack, openthebooks.substack.com. And all I can say is boy, it sure is lucrative to work in Washington, D.C. It's like there's a little payoff slot underneath these television cameras, and it just pours money at you, you know? And I'm really concerned about that. I am really concerned about it. And I suspect you are too. That someone who is supposedly helping us through the nation's certainly most difficult, if not most deadly, pandemic or epidemic or disease, made so much money in doing so. Kind of drives me crazy. This is the Wells Report. I am John David Wells. Elsewhere, after months of minimal coverage on what's happening on the southern border of the United States, major left-leaning media networks ran wall-to-wall coverage of Florida Governor DeSantis' move to send migrants to Martha's Vineyard, far exceeding media minutes spent on immigration in the past year. In just 1 week since the story broke, the network evening news across NBC, CBS, and ABC dedicated more time to DeSantis, as well as Texas Governor Greg Abbott, sending migrants to major Democrat-led cities than they did the border crisis across any single month since September of 2021. Many of these segments included discussions about border crossings, the state of the U.S. immigration system, and hazardous conditions migrants face when crossing into the country. Conversations more infrequently arose in the months prior. From September 14th through the 21st, ABC's evening news broadcasts spent roughly 20 minutes on the issue. NBC dedicated 14 minutes, CBS another 17 minutes based on a review of Grabian transcripts for a total of 51 minutes. By the way, as far as I know, these network news broadcasts are only a half hour. The minutes spent across the three networks on Republican governors sending migrants across the country exceeds the coverage of the border on any given month since September of 2021, when the border crisis received a combination 54 minutes from ABC's World News Tonight, NBC Nightly News, and CBS's Evening News. Coverage of DeSantis almost beat out that important monthly number in just 1 week. The story saw the networks rip into DeSantis and Abbott, with ABC personalities describing the move as a cruel stunt, using human beings to score political points. CBS figures used similar wording, teased a segment on how migrants ended up being used for politics in an inhumane way. The level of coverage topped the total network from April, which stands at approximately 26.95 minutes, a month when border crossings were continuing to reach record highs month over month. A rise in coverage this month was also likely the result of the Biden administration's attempt to lift Title 42, the Trump administration policy that allowed for immediate removal of migrants attempting to cross the border. Additionally, coverage of the border crisis in the month of April was larger than the previous 5 months combined. This, according to a study by the Media Research Center, which provided much of the 2021-22 data found in this story. Coverage of the DeSantis story in the first week nearly doubled April coverage and thus the first 5 months of the year. The border crisis received no minutes of coverage from the evening news in November of 2021, as well as January and February of this year. It's simply not being reported. Until Ron DeSantis starts sending these migrants to sanctuary cities. And so did Governor Greg Abbott. This is something that must continue. The people that arrive in Texas and anywhere else illegally need to be given a place to stay, need to be given water to drink, food to eat, medical care. They need to be stabilized. They need to get their clothes washed. Whatever kind of psychological care they ought to be given. And then they ought to be immediately sent to sanctuary cities all across the United States. Any place where you can find someone being proud of their sanctuary city, that's where these people should go. 1,000 at a time. And just keep the rotation going. Because these people are costing Texas billions of dollars. Just Texas. New Mexico, not so much. The terrain is different. Arizona, another millions, if not billions of dollars. California doesn't care. California really doesn't care because the state is so far out of control. They need as many totalitarian socialists as they can get their hands on, because that's where California is going. And so anybody from any of these socialist totalitarian countries are more than welcome in California. And so what we've got here is we've got this opportunity to share the actual policy that President Biden has been following, and before him, President Obama. This is an opportunity, according to any number of leftist officials that you can actually nail down on the subject. This is an opportunity to redemography very important states in the United States, like Texas. What do I mean by redemography? Well, what you end up doing is suddenly, for example, a couple of weeks ago, there was a report that, according to the research being done at a university somewhere around Texas, that the white population of Texas was now a minority population in Texas. Let me see if I can find that. Let me see if I can find that story. Let's see. Let me see. Let's see if I can find it. I should have done this before. But that's okay. We can do that here. All right. Let's see. Let me give you an idea of what's happening in Texas. The state's Hispanic population is now nearly as large as the non-Hispanic white population. Texas gaining nearly 11 Hispanic residents for every additional white resident since 2010. Those trends set up a pitched battle for political control when state lawmakers redraw legislative districts. This, by the way, was from August of 2021. So that's an old story. Let me see if there's some more recent information here. Okay, here we go. That was the one. That was the one I was dealing with. No, it wasn't. Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't have that. But I saw it. It was. I'm not searching it properly. But the thing about it is regardless of that, in broad terms, the effort is to redemography these states. Because as it turns out, Texas sort of balances out the coasts when it comes to leftist politics. The politics of the coasts, the East Coast and the West Coast, are decidedly leftist. But here in the center of the country, what these people in the beaches of the beach communities of the United States of America call flyover country, things are a little bit more American here. And that's one of the products of leaving the southern border in Texas open. You will note that the Biden administration is already working to close the border in Arizona. That was something they announced about a month ago. But in Texas, no. They're trying to work on a political change, a sea change of politics in the state of Texas. I wonder if it'll be successful. You're listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We'll be back with more coming up in just a couple of moments. Thanks for joining us. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. Feel free to call anytime you wish. So a couple of things. There's some chat room circumstances going regarding that President Obama was called the deporter in chief. I would say that there are more people. I would be more than happy to set up some sort of project where we take the number of people that came into the country during the Obama years versus the number of people that were deported. I just put some demographic information there. What I said is that President Obama wanted more people coming into the United States. President Obama and President Biden both have something in common. They could have fixed the immigration system anytime they chose. President Obama had a Democrat House, a Democrat Senate, and the presidency during 2008 to 2010. Same story here with President Biden. 2020 through 2022, the first 2 years of his administration, he could have fixed immigration if he wanted to. Why didn't he? Why didn't either of these presidents fix it? Why did the Democrat Party fight tooth and nail to try to get control of the border during President Trump's presidency? Why is that? The reason we don't have immigration is it has nothing to do with Republican intransigence. It has solely to do with the advantage that is being foisted on the American people from a political standpoint. The advantage of not having rules. You see, if you come up with this wonderful, comprehensive immigration plan, you actually have to follow the plan. They don't have to do anything now. It's become the status quo ante. The status quo ante to allow people to come in if they can make it. If you can make it, come on in. As a matter of fact, the President of the United States, if you're able to make it in here, linger a little bit so that a news crew comes in with a camera showing a bunch of people living under a bridge, my goodness gracious, he'll take you across the country, free. Put you on a bus and take you someplace in the middle of the night without telling anybody they're about to show up. Well, let me tell you something. If Ron DeSantis and Greg Abbott, to a lesser degree Doug Ducey in Florida, they do the same thing, oh my. All hell breaks loose. All hell breaks loose. So the objective is to allow these people to come in, not have a secure border. And of the last presidents, President Obama, President Trump, President Biden, the only person that did anything about securing the border was President Trump. Period. The problem is not who deported how many, who didn't deport how many, et cetera, et cetera. The problem is the onslaught of people coming into the United States. The people that we know of, number 2 million and more, just in the last year. Based on the Constitution, the federal government handles immigration. Yeah, well, based on the Constitution, the federal government handles secure borders. It's amazing, isn't it? They're not doing either. See, once again, if they handle immigration, then they have to follow rules. If they just hands off, take care of the people after they get here, they don't have to do anything. They don't want immigration. They don't want comprehensive immigration reform. They don't want anything about it. They don't want to have anything to do with it. They want the doors wide open. The thing that is amazing to me is that nobody is connecting what that actually means. Hundreds of thousands of deaths because of fentanyl. Tens of thousands of deaths because of criminality from all these people that are here illegally. Well, and this was the most amazing and disgusting arguments I ever heard about people that were here illegally killing Americans because they were drunk driving at the time. Well, we have drunk drivers here. Excuse me? Well, it doesn't make any difference whether somebody was from another country and whether they're here illegally or not. We have drunk drivers here. They could have just as easily been killed by somebody who's here illegally. I'm going, are you flipping kidding me? Are you absolutely kidding me here? What's fascinating to me is people that get pounded, people that get pounded by drunk driving people, by drunk driving illegal immigrants. Whatever happens to the drunk driving illegal immigrants? Do they spend hard time in jail like an American citizen would? Oh, no, they're deported. Oh, I see. I see. Yeah. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Telephone number is 817-379-2172. Trump or Congress didn't propose any immigration plans either. No, Trump was too busy working on closing the border. Yeah, there's no reason to do anything having to do with immigration when you don't have any control of immigration at all to begin with. First, you have to control it. Then you can reform it. You're listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We'll be back with more coming up in just a couple of seconds. Hour 2, in fact, on the Wells Report. All right, friends. Thanks very much for being with us today. We'll be right back here in about 2 shakes for the next hour. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Why are you watching this broadcast? Well, because you want the news, the real news, truthfully reported. You want the news analyzed. You want fact and bias pointed out. We do that. You're probably interested in a little bit of commentary. I do that too. I make commentary. That is not news. That is opinion. In fact, when I opine, I make sure you know it. There are a lot of people out there that think that their belief system, their ideologies, their opinions are all news. Don Lemon, a perfect practitioner of this. That is not the case for me. You have your own thoughts on that. I'm not here. I am not here to change your mind. I'm here to give you information so that you can make great decisions in the voting booth. And boy, do we need to make great decisions in the voting booth. This is the Wells Report, and thanks very much for being a part of our show today. This is hour number 2. If you missed something in the first hour, go back and get it. That was a good hour discussing Hurricane Ian and the damage that storm put out there. Goodness gracious, what a destructive storm. And the other part that we talked about, we spent an awful lot of time on how high government officials seem to be millionaires when they leave. It's the most amazing thing. And how many millions of dollars you can earn by serving your fellow American in Washington, D.C. It's a little annoying. And the person surrounding that particular circumstance would be Anthony Fauci. Boy, he had a good couple of years. So that's in the first hour. What's this hour? Let's talk about it. There is a very interesting dynamic that has been exposed during the Trump years. That interesting dynamic is the deep state. The deep state is the executive branch agencies essentially going rogue. They make their own rules. They do their own work. There's supposed to be oversight of all executive branch agencies through government, through the actual legislative branch. But it very rarely happens, or it doesn't happen to the level that it needs to happen. Let me give you a little bit of an explanation as to why I'm saying this. This courtesy of Fox News. A government watchdog says the Environmental Protection Agency simply ignored a presidential executive order from President Donald Trump calling for a restructuring of the federal workforce because EPA employees would have been upset. Yeah. The Environmental Protection Agency completely ignored, purposefully ignored is the actual script, an executive order from former President Donald Trump to restructure the federal workforce because they thought their employees would be upset. Just before President Trump left office, he signed an executive order creating a new classification of federal employee known as Schedule F, as in Foxtrot. Employees classified under Schedule F would have been much easier to fire and discipline. The system was aimed at making the federal workforce more accountable to political leaders and reflected GOP complaints that too many federal employees resisted President Trump's policy, ideas, and prescriptions. This week, the U.S. Government Accountability Office released a report on the implementation of Schedule F that bore out those GOP complaints. The report said that only 15 federal agencies made any effort at all to implement Trump's order before President Biden revoked it during the first week of his presidency, President Biden's. EPA purposefully decided not to implement it to protect its employees. EPA officials stated they did not have the time to do the extensive work required to finalize their petition and did not know if the executive order would be applicable under the new administration. They also said their employees would be upset if they learned that the EPA was submitting a petition. Under President Trump's order, federal agencies were asked to identify federal workers suitable for classification under Schedule F, then petition the White House to make that classification change. The order was expected to reclassify as many as 50,000 federal employees under Schedule F. GAO found other examples of the federal bureaucracy's lackluster response to the Trump initiative. Its report said 4 other federal agencies never sent in a petition and were still in the process of reviewing which employees might be reclassified by the time the Biden administration shut down the Trump order. AmeriCorps and 5 other agencies said they determined they didn't have any federal workers who fit the criteria included in Schedule F. AmeriCorps, an agency founded by former President Bill Clinton that works to increase civic engagement through service and volunteering, said it did not need the hiring or removal exceptions provided under Schedule F. Only White House Office of Management and Budget and the International Boundary and Water Commission submitted formal petitions to reclassify their workers under Schedule F. The OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, placed 140 employees onto the schedule. The IBWC suggested 5 employees. That's 2% of the agency's workforce. President Trump has indicated that if he were to retake the White House in 2024, he would push harder to implement a new Schedule F for federal workers. That might not work, especially when you consider just exactly what the House just did. More about that in a moment. In response, the Democrat-led House, okay, it's here right now, so let's just go ahead and jump into it. Yeah, this is great. A lot of people say that President Trump is a has-been, he's done, and so on and so on. Well, not the House of Representatives. House lawmakers passed legislation today that says that only Congress and not the White House can reclassify the employment status of federal workers. That in a vote that was aimed at preemptively protecting the federal workforce from the possible return of President Donald Trump. Remember, I've been telling you that the thing that the deep state, the surveillance state, the administrative state, and the Congress, the leftist Congress, fear more than anything else in the world is a second President Trump administration. Can you imagine what President Trump would do if he was reelected to lead this nation? There would be so many federal pink slips. There would be so many people that were reassigned to other jobs. There would be so many people doing so many different things in the federal government workforce because there needs to be a house cleaning. When the director of the FBI actually starts plotting to send somebody into the Oval Office with a wire because he doesn't like that person's politics, it's time to retool the entire agency. When the EPA gets direct orders from the President of the United States to do something and they don't do it, that's mutiny. They should be fired for cause on the spot. But when they do that, it's time to completely retool the organization. You see, the EPA not wanting to upset its employees, well, the employees work for the people of the United States, not for the EPA. Government work is service. It's not a way to collect a fat paycheck without accountability. It is service to the nation. That's why civil service protections were put in place in the first place. That were all wiped away when all of these federal workers' unions showed up. Government workers' unions, absolutely a bane of our existence. It's a mistake. They didn't need that protection. Federal workers' unions, or unions in general, exist because of mismanagement. It was impossible to fire a civil service employee. It was just impossible. The steps you had to go through, the paper trail you had to have. That was one of the big criticisms of the civil service system in the first place. What you had to do to get rid of a civil service employee was ridiculous. Well, that's not what unions are needed to assist with. Unions exist because of mismanagement. Civil servants, they weren't the victims of mismanagement. All of their working conditions were spelled out in regulation. Civil service law. Until the SEIU and other government workers unions showed up. Not because government workers were having such a tough time, but because there were a whole bunch of people that said, you know what, if we can organize these people, by golly, we can make a fortune. It's true. And that's exactly what they did. And that's exactly what's happening. But I keep talking to you about these executive branch agencies. I keep talking about these people that think that they are the reason there is a United States of America. I don't ever want to hear a senator of the United States, let alone the Senate Majority Leader of the United States, talk about how the intelligence agencies can get you 6 different ways from Sunday. You shouldn't mess with the intelligence agencies. Are you flipping kidding me? The President of the United States is the commander-in-chief. He is the chief executive. The people in the executive branch of the United States government do what the chief executive tells them to do. What the chief executives tell them to do. Period. And when they don't do it, they get fired for gross insubordination. I happen to think that what the EPA just did, that we just found out about, is plain mutiny. And now we're starting to skirt the edges of treason. Just like James Comey did. Just like John Brennan did. Just like Andy McCabe, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, James Clapper. The deep state. If the next president of the United States is not President Trump, then that person had, by God, better be able to figure out some way of getting control of the executive branch of the United States government. Because these people honestly believe they don't have a boss. Someone needs to remind them that they do. Don't you agree? Telephone number 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. Let's talk things over, shall we? 817-379-2172 is our telephone number. You can find us on the chat room. Chat room on YouTube and Facebook, Twitter and Twitch. We're available to you. We'll be back coming up in just a couple of moments as we continue with the news of the day on The Wells Report. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Thanks very much for joining us. Our telephone number, 817-379-2172, 817-379-2172. Glad you are here with us today. This is Thursday for you TGIF fans. Sure happy it's Thursday. In case you've been listening to this broadcast for a while, while I was working on a radio station in Dallas, Texas, I also did a morning show with the incredibly funny Christy Cisneros. She's smart and beautiful, and she's really she's a very talented human being. But she must have listened to me say, for you TGIF fans, sure happy it's Thursday, for a year before she understood what I was talking about and what I was actually saying. It took her about a year to get that. And so if you haven't figured it out, just keep thinking. So while we're on the subject of police state, surveillance state, deep state, where executive branch agencies do what they choose, let's talk a little bit about China. Guess what they're up to? They have opened up dozens of overseas police service stations around the globe, ostensibly to monitor their own citizens living abroad. One of them is in New York City. According to a group called Safeguard Defenders, that's a human rights watchdog, they've issued a report that said these operations eschew official bilateral police and judicial cooperation and violate the international rule of law and may violate the territorial integrity in third countries involved in setting up a parallel policing mechanism using illegal methods. Yeah, in other words, these people are here, Chinese police officers, enforcing Chinese law, at least in New York City. Isn't that a little bit weird? No, it's actually monstrous. The report is titled 110 Overseas, Chinese Transnational Policing Gone Wild. It details China's extensive efforts to combat fraud, what they call fraud, by its citizens living overseas, in part by opening police stations on 5 continents that have assisted Chinese authorities in carrying out policing operations on foreign soil. This is illegal. Absolutely, completely illegal. Europe is home to most of the police stations, locations spread across the continent in places like London, Amsterdam, Prague, Budapest, Athens, Paris, Madrid, and Frankfurt. They've got different governments there. Every single one of those countries, very comfortable with totalitarian rule. Every single one of them. The only country in the world that hasn't dealt with totalitarian rule is the United States of America. But all these other countries, it's okay. Yeah, what they're trying to do is they're attempting to overcome the growing issue of fraud and telecommunications fraud by Chinese nationals living abroad, running operations that have resulted in 230,000 Chinese nationals being persuaded to return to China voluntarily over the last year to face criminal prosecution. I wonder how they were convinced. Here, let us give you this inoculation. Welcome to Peking. Welcome to Beijing. Yeah, that's what's going on. The Chinese are essentially enforcing Chinese law in the United States and Canada. There are 3 offices in Canada. There is one too many Chinese police offices in New York. They need to close that down immediately. Absolutely immediately. You're listening to The Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Back with more coming up in just a couple of seconds. The news, analysis, commentary, and debate. It is The Wells Report. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. My name is John David Wells. If you like this broadcast, if you think there's something in this broadcast that is worth sharing, by all means, share it. If you find this broadcast valuable, subscribe to it. We would really appreciate it. Give us a like. There's a way to say that you like the broadcast. Go ahead and hit one of those. And if you'd like to support the Wells Report financially, you can do that as well. Even though it makes me queasy to say anything about that, I really feel like I should, because my wife will kill me if I don't. She's been subsidizing the Wells Report now for 2.5 years, and she's tired of it. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to have the Wells Report make its own way. Go to patreon.com/the Wells Report. patreon.com/the Wells Report. I'm not asking for much. $1 will do it. Just $1 a month. If you happen to have that extra, I sure would appreciate you sharing it with me. Thank you very much. So our nation's economy is in the middle of a downward slide to recession. And that's being done on purpose. It's being done by government organizations because it has to be done. The reason it has to be done is because inflation is very high. Year-to-year prices are up 8.3%. And regardless of what the president says, he says inflation was up just a little bit month to month. No, it wasn't. It wasn't in any way, shape, or form. It's 8.3% higher than it was last year. That takes away an entire paycheck of yours, a month's paycheck. Not just a 2-week paycheck, but a month's paycheck. That's how much money you're losing because of interest, because of inflation. So, in order to stop inflation, what you have to do is you have to make things tougher in the economy for people that are now in a position where they're already having a tough time in the economy because of inflation. Strangely enough, what you have to do is you have to slow down the economy. And that's what the Fed is doing by raising interest rates. So there will be much more expensive money available to corporations who want to, say, for example, expand, what have you. Well, they're not going to be able to do that. And the reason they're not going to be able to do that is because they won't be able to afford the loans required to do it. And then what will happen is they will cut costs. They will lay off workers. And that's something that the Fed has already noticed. So has the Treasury Department. And so have many, many serious investors. Which is why they are moving away from companies in stock purchases. Now what they're doing is they're moving their money out. You see that in the Dow Jones Industrial Average, down another 458 points today. We were talking about whether or not the Dow Jones Industrial Average was going to break 30,000 going the wrong direction, and what that would mean for our economy, what that would mean for consumer confidence. Well, we're about to break 29,000. It went through 30,000 really quickly. And now we're knocking on the door of breaking 29,000 the wrong way. The Dow is now at 29,225.61. That's it. That's it. Cleo says the administration has killed the mortgage industry. It has. It absolutely has. Mortgage interest has gone up 4 or 5%. 4 or 5 points. And it hasn't been that long. It's only been a few months. I mean, houses are harder to come by, which is strange because there aren't enough houses to actually sell. And so the price of housing is sort of floating, but there isn't money out there to borrow to get them. It's going to cool off the housing market. That means housing prices will go down. This is one of those situations where if you always wanted a house, you always wanted to live the American dream, well, Well, you might want to wait because the housing market is headed south, and soon at this point, at this point, you'll find yourself in a position where buying a house right now, you're going to take a loss. What you want to do is wait till the market gets to the bottom. Friend of mine says, may have to find a part-time job. My retirement IRA will be worth nothing in a couple of months. Well, start thinking about your 401k as well. Your 401k is nourished by stocks. So you may be sitting here going, you're very happy with the way the nation's economy is working. You're one of these people that believe in green energy. You're one of these people that think that Joe Biden is the best president we ever had. Ever. You can hardly wait to drive your electric car. You may be one of those people. But have you looked at your 401k lately? You might want to. You might just want to. But you might want to have a drink first. While we're on the subject of the major indicators, the S&P is off 78.57. What does that mean? Probably nothing. Your eyes glaze over. Well, how about this? According to CNBC, the Standard & Poor 500 closed at a new low for 2022. And let's see, what did Apple do today? What did Apple do? They did something weird today that drove the loss on the S&P. By the way, NASDAQ was down almost 3 points, or 3 percentage points, not just points, 3 percentage points. They were off 314.13 points today. Why is that? Well, maybe it has to do with this consolidation of the United States economy. It dropped at 0.6 annual rate from April through June. This, by the way, news reported today from the Associated Press. Battered by surging consumer prices and rising interest rates, the U.S. economy shrank at a 0.6% annual rate from April through June, according to the government announcing that today, unchanged from its previous second quarter estimate. It marked the second consecutive quarter of economic contraction, one informal rule of thumb for a recession. Most economists, citing strong and resilient American job market, believe that the world's biggest economy is not yet in a downturn, but they worry it might be headed for one as the Federal Reserve continues to ratchet up interest rates. Consumer spending grew at 2% and a 2% annual rate, but that gain was offset by a drop in business inventories and housing investment. The U.S. economy has been sending out mixed signals this year. Gross domestic product, GDP, went backward in the first half of 2022, but the job market has stayed strong. Employers are adding an average of 438,000 jobs a month this year, on pace to be the second best year for hiring, behind 2021 in government records going back to 1940. Unemployment is at 3.7%, low by historic standards. There are currently about 2 jobs for every unemployed American. But the Fed raising interest rates 5 times this year, most recently September 21st, to rein in consumer prices, which were up 8.3% in August from a year earlier, despite plummeting gasoline prices. Higher borrowing costs raise the risk of a recession and higher unemployment. We have to get inflation behind us, said Fed Chair Jerome Powell. I wish there was a painless way to do it. There isn't. There will be a market increase in people who are laid off. Unemployment is about to increase dramatically. And things will very shortly start to sort themselves out in a more recognizable pattern. You see, the economy was doing very, very well when Joe Biden decided to change it to something else. And there are these currents and eddies and subsystems and all of these things that are clashing into each other as a part of this, as the president called, transition. Believe me, reality is just around the corner. A recession is here. And why are they doing it on purpose? Even Jerome Powell says. We've got to get inflation behind us. I wish there was a painless way to do it. There isn't. You have to really hurt the economy to get control of inflation. That's what you have to do. And what does hurting the economy do? Well, people get fired. Unemployment goes up. Jobs easy to find now, hard to come by soon. And then things will get back to a situation where we've had before, where people have to really scramble. The days of this amazing prosperity are coming to a close, and you need to be ready for it. How do you do it? Well, you got to write it out more than anything. If you have a house, keep it. If you don't absolutely have to have a house, don't buy one. Wait. Langston says he predicts the job market will stay strong. Only if the United States government intervenes, like they did during the Great Depression. And let's hope it doesn't get that far, Langston. You need to read more books. I check out the news every day. It's the first draft of history. And just about everybody is very concerned about the possibility of this recession. And recessions mean unemployment. You're making a mistake there. The risk of recession, along with persistently and painfully high prices, poses an obstacle to President Joe Biden's Democrats as they try to retain control of Congress in the November midterm elections. The drop in gasoline prices have improved customer spirits in the past 2 months. This, according to NBC News. I really don't think I have much joy when I pay $95 for a tank of gas instead of $105 for a tank of gas. It's still way too flipping much. And it's been way too much in my entire life. You know, gasoline was just unbelievably expensive until about 1973. For what you were getting, gasoline was the best buy in the world. Diesel fuel was even better. Diesel fuel was down to like 15 cents a gallon. And then the Arab oil embargo hit. The Arab oil embargo hit, and suddenly gasoline went over $4 a gallon, and people just about freaked out. They couldn't believe it. And then the prices settled down to about, $1.25. And I said, that's a pretty good price. That's pretty fair. I could see $1.25 for what you get for a gallon of gas. Yeah, because the value was there. Well, gasoline just went through the flipping roof and has stayed there. With one brief respite during the Trump administration when gasoline got down to about $1.80. And I'm sitting there going, that would be perfect. Gosh, I hope it stays there for a while. And it did for about a year and a half, maybe 2 years. And then we decided that we wanted to be beholden to nations that hate us for our energy again. And here we are. Yeah, there's an improvement. $4.50, $5.50 down to $3.75. Yeah, that's an improvement. It's still badly off base. And so what we have here is we have an economy that is headed that direction, and that's one of the reasons why I'm telling you. Today's report was the Today's report was the Commerce Department's third and final take on second quarter growth. First look at the economy's July-September performance comes out October 27th. Economists on average expect the GDP will return to growth in the third quarter, expanding at a modest 1.5 annual pace, according to a survey from the data firm FactSet. Let's hope so. I doubt it, because once again, if GDP increases, expect inflation to increase. That's why inflation is so bad. This is why they have to go through all this. They have to go through all this because inflation will destroy an economy. A recession will damage it. And you've got your choice between destruction or damage. Okay? And so they're choosing damage. That is why we are where we are. And it is because of federal government policy. And that is simply the truth. So whatever you believe, you might want to keep that in mind when you're making your decisions in the ballot box. You're listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. You can join us on chat room. The chat room is flying today on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Looking forward to hearing what you have to say on the Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells, giving you the news and the issues of the day, and we're spending a lot of time talking. So let's get back to it, shall we? So the President of the United States found himself in a position where he came up with this wonderful idea, student loan forgiveness. And he said that it was going to save an awful lot of people that have been working really, really hard, an awful lot of money. Matter of fact, it was going to cost $22,079 for every taxpayer in the United States. That's how much of their tax money was going to be spent in paying back these loans, or actually paying the students money so that they could pay back their loans. Well, a lot of people said, "Are you kidding?" And a lot of people started throwing lawsuits at the Biden administration. The Biden administration noticed. They are now scaling back the eligibility for their student loan forgiveness plan. Yeah. Borrowers whose federal student loans are guaranteed by the government but held by private lenders will no longer be able to receive debt relief. About 770,000 people will be affected by that change. So suddenly 770,000 people will not be getting 10 grand or 20 grand, depending on their circumstances. Expect that to continue. Why? Well, because 6 states are now suing President Joe Biden in an effort to block the student loan forgiveness plan. So let me give you the background. The Department of Education, try it again. The Department of Education initially said these loans, many of which were made under the former Federal Family Education Loan Program and the Federal Perkins Loan Program, would be eligible for the one-time forgiveness action as long as the borrower consolidated his or her debt into the Federal Direct Loan Program. Today, the department reversed course. According to the website, privately held federal student loans must have been consolidated before September 29th in order to be eligible for debt relief. Except you didn't find out about it until September 29th. Oops. Borrowers with privately held federal student loans who have not consolidated yet are out of luck. Though the Department of Education says it's assessing whether there are alternative pathways. By the way, there is an alternative pathway. Elizabeth Warren, the senator from wherever she's the senator from, I believe Massachusetts. Anyway, she came up with a wonderful way to help these people. You can now go bankrupt and list your student loans, according to this bill. It hasn't been passed yet. You'll be able to go bankrupt and use and write off your student loans. The problem with it is you will go bankrupt in order to make that happen. But at this particular moment, you can't go bankrupt on your loans and just walk away from them. So at least the administration is giving you a chance to go ahead and divest yourself of this horrifying loan burden that you agreed to all those years ago and now are having trouble paying back because the degree that you got when you went to college is essentially worthless, which is why you're not making enough money to pay back your loans. Isn't it fascinating? Isn't it fascinating? Well, wait a minute. I went to an amazing school. I went to Harvard. Yeah, and your degree is worthless. And you spent, what, $125,000 on it? But at the end of the day, it's still a Bachelor of Arts or a Bachelor of Science. Actually, probably it wouldn't be a problem for the Bachelor of Science degrees because everybody that has a Bachelor of Science degree that I know says, yeah, I have a real college degree. Bachelor of Art degrees, those are the people that are having trouble paying back their student loans. Just saying. So the lawsuits were filed in federal court in Missouri by state attorneys general from Missouri, Arkansas, Kansas, Nebraska, and South Carolina. Also legal representatives from Iowa. In addition to being economically unwise and inherently unfair, the Biden administration mass debt cancellation is another example of a long line of unlawful regulatory actions. No statute permits President Biden to unilaterally relieve millions of individuals from their obligation to pay loans they voluntarily assume, said Nebraska Attorney General Doug Peterson. The plaintiffs argued that student loan servicers, including the Higher Education Loan Authority of the state of Missouri, known as MOHELA, are harmed by Biden's student loan forgiveness plan. It argues the plan creates an incentive for borrowers to consolidate federal family education loans owned by MOHELA into direct loans owned by the federal government, depriving MOHELA of the ongoing revenue it earns from servicing those loans. Yeah. So 6 states are now suing the federal administration, the Biden administration, for the loan forgiveness program. Yeah, that is slowly going to be winnowed away into nothingness. I'm just pointing that out so in case, well, not in case, but when it happens, you heard it here first. You're listening to the Wells Report. Our telephone number 817-379-2172. Feel free to call anytime you'd like. We bring you the news. We analyze the news for fact. We make commentary and we debate. This is the Wells Report. We'll be back with more coming up next hour as we continue on this Thursday afternoon. All right, wonderful people. Well, I'll be seeing you here in just a couple of seconds for hour number 3. Off we go. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Welcome to the broadcast. We bring you the news, the real news. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. We make commentary, not the news. Just my opinion. But it's just as valuable as yours, so let's compare. That's debate. News analysis, commentary, and debate. This is the Wells Report. I'm glad you're here. So, a while back, we were having a debate on the Wells Report with a friend of mine who is a Democrat. He voted for President Obama a couple of times, but he's a guy that I really enjoy speaking to. We were talking a little bit about the 2016 election. And I noticed that what was happening was that the Clinton campaign at the time was headed towards a scorched earth strategy. And that particular strategy I brought up, and this guy said, no, that's not a scorched earth strategy. That's not what they would do. They would never do that. Well, they were doing it. And in the run-up to the 2020 election, they did it again. And now into the run-up to the 2022 election, less than 6 weeks away, that scorched earth is starting to get painful. It is starting to make itself tremendously apparent. And how is it making itself apparent? Well, in these incredibly divisive, damaging speeches being given by President Biden. He made another one last night. President Biden suggested, this is from Fox News, this will be biased news coverage here. But I'm going to give it to you because I've got comments about it coming up in just a little bit. President Biden suggested Americans are not proud of their country during a divisive speech at a political fundraiser for Democrats in Washington, D.C. While Hurricane Ian was pummeling Florida with strong winds and a massive storm surge, the speech was being given at a private residence in Washington, D.C. at a reception put on by the Democrat Governors Association. It was attended by Governor Phil Murphy, the Democrat from New Jersey, Governor John Carney, the Democrat from Delaware, and the city's Democrat Mayor, Muriel Bowser. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre had faced questions from reporters earlier in the day about Biden's attendance at the fundraiser, questioning whether he would cancel his planned appearance and instead focus his attention toward the hurricane challenges facing Florida. That is a political cheap shot. That's just my opinion. But you know how I talk about analyzing the news for fact and bias? That's just a political cheap shot by Fox News. Okay? The President of the United States can certainly be in touch with what's going on in Florida and still handle a party fundraiser. Okay? It's just, everybody does it. It's the way it works. You know, this is a well-structured governmental system. The president does not have to oversee every individual issue, every single place in every single state at every given moment. It's a political cheap shot by Fox News. The president, after spending the opening portion of the speech thanking first responders and others for their efforts in assisting those affected by the hurricane, gave way to a political blast against the MAGA crowd, including tying them to fascism again and portraying Americans being proud of the U.S. as a distant hope. And then he used this term that means absolutely nothing, an inflection point. A turning point, yes, not an inflection point. Inflection point, that's a term of art that means virtually nothing. He said it again, we're really at an inflection point here. He was speaking about the upcoming midterm elections before going on to claim democracy was at stake and that the election was about democracy versus autocracy or autocracy. He stressed the need for Democrats to retain control of Congress, something unlikely to happen as the House of Representatives, according to Fox News Power Rankings. And then he dove into abortion, marriage equality, voting rights, Social Security, Medicare, and his desire to ban assault weapons. The people of the United States are interested in high prices and inflation and the border, et cetera, et cetera. All of these issues have nothing to do with what American people are trying to get fixed. Turning to the GOP, Biden quipped, "This is not your father's Republican Party." MAGA Republicans are becoming more prominent than establishment Republicans. That's good. Why? Well, because establishment Republicans don't get anything done. And yes, this is not your father's Republican Party. Joe Biden is completely and totally correct. Because your father's Republican Party simply enabled Democrat priorities as opposed to coming up with their own. I want a political party that knows what it's doing, that defends the Constitution of the United States and the Bill of Rights. That's the party that I want. There doesn't exist, that one doesn't exist right now. President Biden argued the Republican Party was tearing down the country rather than building it up. He added there was a tinge of fascism into what they're doing when it came to those he said weren't accepting the results of the 2020 presidential election. President Biden later claimed that some Republican members of Congress wanted to vote with him on certain issues, but were scared of being booted out of office, not a courageous position. Well, only if you honestly believe that what you're trying to get these Republicans to vote for is a good idea. If the Republicans that are supposed to vote for it don't think it's a good idea, they're not going to vote for it. And they're certainly not going to vote for it just to be able to be your father's Republican Party. Remember, the one that enables the Democrat policy priorities? Biden suggested many Americans are uninspired. They don't believe that the U.S. can accomplish great things anymore. Think about the average person. This is what he says here, and I've read this 3 or 4 times. Maybe you can explain it to me. Quote, think about the average person turning on the television every morning. And what do they see? What do they see out there that really uplifts them? Where they go, God, I feel good about being an American. I feel really proud. There's another entire clause of the sentence missing. There's nothing, he should have said, there's nothing like that on television. Correct. There's nothing like that on television. Watching television is exquisitely painful, especially the news. You've got people telling you that the president is screwing up like art on one channel, and then you've got another channel screaming at the people that are telling the American people that the president is screwing up like art, that they're idiots and they don't know what they're talking about. This is a giant food fight. In point of fact, 75% of Americans believe the country's on the wrong track. This hue and cry and this food fight going back and forth between the people saying, yeah, there's a problem, and the other people saying, no, there's not a problem. I'm here to tell you there's a problem. GDP is going down. The economy is beginning to slide into recession. On purpose, because of bad political policy. That's what's happening. And all the rest of this is the president pouring salt on that wound. And I don't know why he's doing it, but he keeps doing it. He just keeps doing it. For some reason, he believes that telling everyone that 74 million Americans hate the country and are trying to tear it down and are fascists is a winning formula for 2022. Mr. President, you're not convincing a lot of people to vote for you. You're simply not. You're talking about all this other stuff that has nothing to do with any real Americans. Nothing. It has nothing to do with Americans that are actually just trying to make a living. The real Americans I'm talking about. Has nothing to do with them. It has to do with your political ideologies. All this echo chamber garbage that flies around and among the people that you pay attention to. That's not the reality, sir. The reality that we're dealing with here is that you took us from prosperity to the brink of real difficulty economically in less than 2 years. And a lot of people are frightened because of that. And calling them fascists and saying that they're not proud of their country. No, they're not proud of what you're doing in our country. That's different than being proud of the country. And the president doesn't understand that. He doesn't understand that it's not the country that people aren't proud of. It's the president they're not proud of. Now, I'm not trying to be a snot. I'm not trying to be a jerk. I'm not trying to tear down the president. I'm speaking to the president directly. Mr. President, you're being lied to. You're hurting the United States of America. You're doing it because people are telling you to. They're convincing you you're doing the right thing. They're lying to you, sir. What you need to do is you need to stop. You need to stop and you need to start actually dealing with the things that people in the United States need you to deal with. It doesn't have anything to do with electric cars. It doesn't. It doesn't have anything to do with any of those things. What was that list of stuff that he was talking about? Oh, here we go. Issues of abortion. Abortion law has gone back to the states where it belongs. The Supreme Court of the United States broke the Constitution when they settled Roe v. Wade. You cannot put an amendment into the Constitution through the Supreme Court of the United States. Marriage equality. Marriage equality is not that high on the list. Voting rights? Voting rights. You know what people in the United States, you know what people in the United States want? People in the United States want confidence in their elections. They want to make sure that registered voters are voting. That people that don't bother to register to vote don't vote. And the people that register to vote are actually legal voters. That's what they want about voting, voting rights. Social Security is a mess. It's the number one loss item in the American budget. We need to do something about it. You're not doing anything about it. And your desire to ban assault weapons? Sir, you are absolutely out to lunch on that issue. Stop. Just stop dealing with it. It's not an issue that's going to get you reelected or get anybody you know reelected. This is the Wells Report. We'll be back with more coming up in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. By now, you've probably heard about the president at the Hunger, Nutrition, and Health Conference. They gave him the microphone, and what ended up happening is that he started using it actually, and it was the weirdest thing ever. And I really don't know exactly how that worked. Okay. But the president of the United States was at this conference. And this is what he said while he was speaking. And once again, Jackie Walorski was a representative who was killed in a car accident a couple of months ago. And she was part of this White House conference on hunger, nutrition, and health. This is what the president had to say.
And I want to thank all of you here for including bipartisan elected officials like Representative Governor, Senator Braun, Senator Booker, Representative Jackie. Are you here? Where's Jackie? I didn't think she was going to be here. To help.
She's dead, Mr. President. That, by the way, led to some difficulty for Karine Jean-Pierre. And what ended up happening with that is that she was asked a lot of questions about this. And she was doing her best to try to explain the unexplainable. President Biden had deceased Representative Jackie Walorski top of mind yesterday when he looked for her in the audience at an event addressing hunger in the United States. This according to White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre. Jean-Pierre fielded roughly 10 questions about the president's gaffe during a White House briefing. Jean-Pierre told reporters 14 times the president was not confused about whether Walorski was alive and in the room, but he had her top of mind because he was meeting with her family on Friday. The Indiana congresswoman was killed in a car accident in August, the White House noted in a statement at the time. The president was naming the congressional champions on this issue and was acknowledging her incredible work. He'd already planned to welcome the congresswoman's family to the White House. On Friday, there will be a bill signing in her honor this coming Friday. On Friday, there will be a bill signing in her honor this coming Friday from the Department of Redundancy Department. So, of course, she was on his mind. She was top of mind for the president. Reporters were not satisfied with the response. Following questions about the discussions between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia pressing for the White House on how it plans to respond to the subjective sabotage of 2 natural gas pipelines fueling Europe, reporters returned to the president's confusion about whether the former Indiana congresswoman was still alive. So a reporter asked, look, if Representative Walorski, who died in a car accident last month, was at the top of the president's mind, then why did he look for her in the room? Karine Jean-Pierre said, again, I think people can understand. I think people out there who, watch the briefing from time to time, maybe at this moment, will understand when someone is that top of mind. Huh? What's happening? Is it a virus? Is there some kind of virus coursing through the White House? A third reporter brought up the president's slip, pushing Jean-Pierre to give an exasperated, why one more time? Yeah, she said this, I just answered the question. If that had been the case, I would have stated that. I clearly stated what you just laid out. What I've said is that she was on the top of mind. He was going to go see her family in 2 days' time on Friday to honor her work, to honor her legacy, if you will. It's really simple, Ms. Jean-Pierre. You say the president was thinking about other things, and he looked for someone in the crowd that should have been there, but sadly lost her life in a traffic accident. And then you move on. It's time to stop lying. You're listening to The Wells Report. We'll be back with more coming up in just a couple of moments. Thanks for joining us. This is the Wells Report. John David Wells at your service. Thanks very much for joining us. This is a broadcast that if you find value in, I'd like you to share it with your friends. I'd like you to subscribe to it. I'd like you to hit the like button. And if you'd like to put your money where my mouth is, go to patreon.com/The Wells Report. You can support this show financially for $1 a month. It'd be awesome. It really would. If you can do that, I would absolutely appreciate it. Thanks very much for being with us today. We're discussing politics in this particular hour. We discussed Hurricane Ian and lots of other things. But I did want to tell you that Vice President Kamala Harris is out in the she's out in the Asian area. She's out in the Pacific Rim at this particular moment. And the headline on Fox News is VP Kamala Harris expresses support for Taiwan, torches China while addressing Navy sailors in Japan. Let me read this to you. Vice President Kamala Harris called out China during a speech she made at a U.S. naval base in Japan on Wednesday, accusing the Asian superpower of disturbing activity toward Taiwan. Harris arrived at the United States Fleet Activities Yokosuka, that's a U.S. naval base, and toured the USS Howard before addressing Navy personnel that afternoon. After applauding the work of the U.S. Navy, the vice president launched into a heated rebuke of Chinese military actions, accusing the Asian superpower of undermining international rules-based order with its acts of aggression against Taiwan. China has challenged freedom of the seas. China has flexed its military and economic might to coerce and intimidate its neighbors. And we have witnessed disturbing behavior in the East China Sea and the South China Sea, most recently provocations across the Taiwan Strait. During the speech, Harris briefly alluded to America's role in ensuring peace and stability in the region, saying that Washington will continue to support Taiwan. The United States believes that peace and stability in the Taiwan Straits is an essential feature of a free and open Indo-Pacific. We will continue to fly, sail, operate undaunted and unafraid, wherever and whenever international law allows. We will continue to support Taiwan's self-defense, consistent with our long-standing policy, calling Taiwan a vibrant democracy that contributes to the global good. The United States is a proud Pacific power. The American people have a profound stake in the future of this region. We will continue to promote an Indo-Pacific that is free, open, connected, secure, and resilient. The speech came as Vice President Harris's trip to Japan nears an end. She's scheduled to visit the demilitarized zone separating the North and South Korean countries today, and she did. But I want to stop and I want to say that this was good. Vice President just made a real policy speech. She said the right things to the right people at the right time about things that needed to be talked about. And I'm not kidding. I'm not being sarcastic. This may have been her best moment as a vice president. I report a lot of things that Vice President Harris does really badly. But I do report things when she does something. I also report things that she does really, really well. This was a very good speech. It needed to be said. The President of the United States probably shouldn't say stuff like that, but the Vice President should make it abundantly clear where the United States stands. And that was a good thing. Then she went to the demilitarized zone between North and South Korea. This is also from Fox News. Vice President Kamala Harris made a speech at the Korean Peninsula's demilitarized zone. That's the zone that separates North and South Korea. And she said that the United States has a strong alliance with the Republic of North Korea. It is an alliance that is strong and enduring. She intended to refer to the Republic of Korea, not the Republic of North Korea. The Republic of Korea is South Korea's official name. The vice president continued her remarks by professing the U.S. support for South Korea's defense against the increasingly aggressive North Korean government. I cannot state enough the commitment of the United States to the defense of the Republic of Korea is ironclad, and that we will do anything in our power to ensure, we will do everything in our power to ensure that it has the meaning in every way that words suggest. Okay, who is writing this speech? The heavily fortified DMZ, a buffer zone that separates North and South Korea, was Harris's final stop on her diplomatic trip to Asia. The gesture of visiting the DMZ is designed to illustrate America's rock-solid commitment to regional security. This, according to White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre. Harris began her visit by stopping at the Camp Boniface dining facility and thanking American service members. She used binoculars to observe the DMZ, which is roughly 160 miles long and 2.5 miles wide. The vice president then headed to the observation post Willette to give her speech about her commitment to South Korean security, which was, once again, a very good idea. It's just that you need to know what country you're talking about. Shortly before the DMZ visit, Harris met with South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol and praised the U.S.-South Korean alliance as a linchpin of security and prosperity. She and Yoon also discussed South Korea's economic and technological partnerships with the U.S. earlier, in addition to gender equality. Okay. The visit comes a day after North Korea fired a third ballistic missile into the sea in an act of provocation by Kim Jong-un. The country has previously fired 2 short-range ballistic missiles during Harris's stay in Japan. North Korea made a similar gesture in June by firing a trio of missiles before President Biden's trip to Seoul that month. Harris condemned North Korea's illicit weapons program during a Wednesday speech at United States Fleet Activities Yokosuka. All right. So the vice president of the United States, after making a really good speech in Japan, went to the DMZ between North and South Korea and got the countries mixed up. Okay. That's not a huge deal, except, of course, that you're making mistakes. And at this particular moment, you need to stop making mistakes. The Biden administration needs to stop making mistakes. Karine Jean-Pierre said North Korea's missile test was not unusual, affirming it would not dissuade Harris from visiting the DMZ. As you know, North Korea has a history of doing these types of tests. South Korean activists were seen protesting against Harris's visit near the presidential office in Seoul. Protesters wore masks showing the faces of Harris and President Yoon as they demonstrated against the U.S.-South Korean alliance. Harris's visit has drawn criticism from Republicans who claim she has neglected the migrant crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border. Okay, once again, that's a cheap political shot. After the DMZ visit, Harris departed from Osan Air Base to fly back to Joint Base Andrews in Maryland. She's probably en route now. So, the good and the bad by Harris. But I think in this particular case, the good speech outweighs the less important gaffe. But just as a matter of shall we say, trying to get it right a bit, can we please stop having these amazing gaffes by the Biden administration? Can we please stop doing that? I would sincerely appreciate it if indeed they would. I don't know how I actually do know how to do it. Okay, here is the speech. Read the speech. Don't break away from the speech. Just read the speech. Okay? Remember, that direction is north. North Korea is there. This is South Korea. Okay? The People's Republic of Korea is North Korea. The Republic of Korea is South Korea. And what you do is you make sure that she understands that those are the countries she's dealing with. Everybody makes these mistakes. Everybody makes these mistakes. Everybody does. If you haven't made a mistake like that, it's just a matter of time. Like I keep telling you, you sit in front of one of these things, or you have one of these things thrown in your face, you're going to make mistakes. They just make too many. You got to prepare these people. Now, the only thing that I can say that may be stopping these people from doing it is, say, for example, Kamala Harris believing she doesn't have any problems with this issue. In other words, she knows better than you. Sit down and shut up. No. No, Ms. Vice President, you really need to read the speech. As you get better at it, then you can start venturing off the speech. But until you get better at it, read the speech. Here's the speech. Read the speech. President Biden makes mistakes when he goes off script. And that is something else that I want to bring up while I have a moment. The President Biden that has been in the public eye handling, say, for example, 60 Minutes interviews and other speeches, say, for example, in the last week and a half or so, is far different from the President Biden that we saw looking for Representative Jackie Walorski, who was dead at the Nutrition Summit. I don't know what medication they have the president on, but I can tell you something about it. You can't put the president on it all the time. So whatever this particular medication is, he can't be on it all the time. And there are times when the president is not really connected. And this is when people say he has cognitive loss. Now, I don't know what this medication is, but I assure you that A, it's very, very good. And when he's on it, that's the Joe Biden that I'm familiar with. However, when he's not on it, he kind of mumbles and stumbles and doesn't really know where he is a lot of the time. Now, I don't know how long it's going to be, but I'm keeping track. I'm keeping track of the times when President Biden is lucid, and then how much time intervenes before we see him again. Because I'm reasonably sure that that'll give you some idea of what kind of medication this is. But clearly, there are two President Bidens. And I have to be honest with you. This is a guy that eats properly and sleeps properly. It's not about his health. In other words, his physical being. He gets all the sleep he needs, and he eats his vitamins and so on and so on. But this is different. We're seeing a much different guy. And I don't know what that medication is, but I know it's medication. We'll find out at some point. I just hope the reason I'm bringing this up is not because I'm saying he's on drugs, that's not the point. The reason I'm bringing this up is because I hope there's not long-term damage being done by these drugs. And the reason I'm saying that is because he's not on them all the time. There's this lag period. Now, I don't know what drug fits that description. But if you happen to be, say, for example, a doctor or a pharmacist, and you have an idea of what this might be, let me know. Let me know. There have been a lot of presidents that have been on lots of medications. Famously, John F. Kennedy. He had Addison's disease. He also had a terrible back. He was on testosterone and cortisone. That did affect his behavior. And it also affected his body. Cortisone is not good for you, but it does get rid of inflammation and pain. but it does mess up your body. And that's why I'm bringing this up. I'm not bringing it up for political reasons. I'm bringing it up for caring reasons. I care about the president's health. And I'm really interested in seeing this president through this presidency in as close to one piece as possible. You get what I'm saying there? If you're confused, let me know in the chat room. My name is John David Wells. You are listening to the Wells Report. We'll be back to wrap up the show with something that is sort of like what I just discussed. It has something to do with being on autopilot. Yeah, that's next on the Wells Report. We'll be back in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. Have you ever heard of Mark Gungor? Mark Gungor. Gungor. I just put Mark Gungor's, a link to Mark Gungor's talk about the difference between men and women's brains. It's something you should watch. It's called The Nothing Box. I want you to just keep that in mind for a moment. A study in London has come up with something that I think you need to be aware of, and the predicate comes from Study Finds. Okay, this is a group that picks up studies from around the world and let you know about them, etc. Does every day of your life feel exactly the same with the years just flying by? You're far from alone. It turns out that the average adult spends more than 10 years of their life on autopilot. You know, autopilot, where you get in your car and you say, I got to drop this off before I go to work, and you forget all about it and you go to work and you still haven't dropped it off. Autopilot. Following the same routine rituals every day. A quarter of 2,000 adults admit they often drift through as much as 5 or more hours a day without any real thought about what they're doing. It equates to 1,396 hours every year, 27 hours a week, 4 hours a day doing the same old things and not really thinking about it. Moreover, 64% of adults claim their daily routine hardly ever changes. Topping the list of routines that never change for the average person includes getting dressed or showering at the same time of day, eating the same breakfast. 79% of those who feel they're stuck in a rut of repetitive routines feel this holds them back from achieving their goals. The most common things respondents say that they'd like to do, but they haven't had a chance to do yet, include learning a new skill or craft, traveling the world, starting a new career, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The study, by the way, was commissioned by Bank NatWest, conducted by one poll, found that 51% of adults admit they procrastinate instead of acting on tasks that need doing, including managing their finances, organizing dates with friends, and food shopping. 6 in 10 have bought a self-help book but never finished it. Some even not even completing the first chapter. And so, autopilot. I found it interesting that people spend up to 10 years of their lives on autopilot. But you know, it's structural. Okay? It's structural. Let me explain. I play drums. Okay? So I'm going to do this by snapping your fingers. Okay? Play a song. 1, 2, 3. You know? And you do that until your brain sort of shunts it onto autopilot. And you start to think about other things. Well, that girl's got a pretty dress on. Gosh, this is a great voice. Hey, nice sax solo. You know, and what ends up happening is you forget that you're snapping your fingers in time with the music. And so you're just doing it. It's an autopilot. Things that drummers do, a lot of that goes on autopilot. And you start thinking about other things while you're doing the things that you're doing while you're playing drums. You say, wait a minute, I can play that here while you're playing. It's the ultimate in multitasking. But you can only do that because your brain is structured to do that. And so when you get in your car, you start the car, you don't have to do it step by step by step. This takes me back to Mark Gungor, who is somebody who has noticed first the difference between men and women's brains. Men's brains are mostly linear. In other words, there's a left brain that does certain things. My left brain is where pretty much the art and stuff is. My right brain is where the information is. So the information's here, and the artistic part of me is here, left brain. Women, on the other hand, they're wired all over everywhere. Okay? They're wired all over everywhere. So it is absolutely and completely true that women use far more of their brains than men do. And the nothing box is this thing that men can do that women can't do. We can sit there and literally think about nothing. Just sort of sit there and just, the turbine, I call it my turbine's winding down. My son has a t-shirt that says I'm on low power mode. We just sit there and it's the ultimate in autopilot. Women can't do it. Like I said, Gary says the right side of my head is bigger. Okay, that may be true. Anyway, what I'm trying to tell you is that autopilot is how you get to the end of the year and say, wow, that year flew by. In point of fact, I spend a lot of time avoiding autopilot. And that's the point of all of this. Pay attention to what you're doing. Pay attention to what's around you. Pay attention to the moments that you have. You know, I tell parents of little kids, I say, hey, you need to pay attention because they're only like that for about 20 minutes. It's true. And by the way, watch The Nothing Box. It is hysterical. It's fantastic. It's wonderful. This has been the Wells Report. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you again for the Fishing Shirt Friday edition. Don't miss it. Okay. So there you go. I'm glad you got to join today too, Ms. Cleo. Thanks very much for joining with us today. I appreciate it. Yeah, you do have to spend time in the Nothing Box from time to time. You absolutely do. It's something that men do because we need to. You know, we got other things on our mind. We just need to sit there and we just need to sit there and just stare off into space. Okay, it's how we rest. It's amazing. Toodles, Ms. Ann. Thanks very much. I appreciate it. So anyway, I'm going to leave now. So until tomorrow, enjoy the rest of your evening. Be careful. Make good decisions. Be safe. All right. And I will see you for Fishing Shirt Friday. So make sure, by the way, I will be wearing a somber colored fishing shirt tomorrow, probably gray, just so you know. Because I only have a few bright ones. I might wear my white one. I'll think it over.